welcome to this week's episode of the Blackley podcast. This week we have Quinn on the podcast for the first time. So, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. I'm Brandon's little brother, Adam. I'm his wife. We've been married for almost 4 years now. So,
has it really been 4 years?
Yeah, in December.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Isn't that
I feel
crazy?
like that's way longer than I thought.
Yeah, I know. And then I think about Reagan and Merrick and Matthew and Lena, and they've been married 3 and 2 years.
Because it was every year back to back. You guys you guys just ruined Christmas 3 years in a row.
It's kind of stupid to get married at Christmas, but we all did it. We were
3 years,
students.
3 years in a row. It was like everybody would ask, "What's your Christmas plans?" It's like, "Oh, I have another sibling getting married." Yep. Oh, I have another sibling getting married. Nice.
Yeah.
So what do you do for work?
So I work for a construction company called WW Clyde, but I'm a proposal coordinator for them. So don't see me out there touching any jackhammers or anything. I'm an office worker, and I do like graphics and writing and stuff like that for them.
Okay. So but you got a degree. What did you get your degree in?
English. From BYU.
That is quite the jump from an English major to construction.
Yeah. I never dreamed I would work for a construction company, but apparently they needed an English person and I fit the bill. So
okay.
It's been a good job, surprisingly.
Is that what you always dreamed of doing while you were getting your English degree?
It was. I dreamed of working with project managers who can't spell. No, but that's where I wound up. I interviewed with them and I really liked them and I needed an income. So signed up.
So what did you want to do with your English degree?
Honestly, I think like best case scenario moving forward, I would love to write.
Really?
Yeah. I think that would be, I've loved to write since elementary school, like in 6th grade. My elementary school teacher had us do one of those, like you write in an envelope and then you're not supposed to read it until you graduate from college. I'm sure my mom lost mine because I never read it, but I have a great memory. So I wrote that I wanted to go to BYU and get an English degree in 6th grade. It's a really weird thing to write as a 6th grader. And I thought I was going to be an English teacher for a hot minute. And then I kind of switched right at the end to just English to graduate earlier. And yeah, so I fulfilled my 6th grade dreams.
Nice.
That's really awesome. Lame 6th grade dreams.
Hey, but dreams are dreams.
It's true. Yeah. So honestly, I would love to write, but we'll see what happens.
So do you have any ideas?
So I said I was thinking about being an English teacher, which I think I really enjoyed when I was doing student teaching and stuff. I had a really good time with it, but it's just such a hard job to go into, and
they just don't pay anything and they demand so much of you.
Yeah. People make fun of it as like a job that's not hard, but teaching is so hard. And you have so many hoops you have to jump through now, depending on where you're teaching, what state and what school district, XYZ. But I had a lot of fun with it. I love teenagers, like weird. Like it's fun. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and like I have loved hanging out with my teenage siblings, and we just have fun together. But I love young adult literature. Like that's my bread and butter as far as reading goes. So I would love to write YA lit. Like that would be my jam.
So like what kind of books, like if you had to say your top 3 to 5 recommendations for young adult literature?
I am definitely a historical fiction fan too. So I think my favorite historical fiction YA author is Runa Sepetys. She's written like Salt of the Sea. That's her most famous one. My favorite of hers is Fountains of Silence. It takes place in Spain in the 50s, where there was like all this crazy stuff happening in the Catholic Church and orphanages. It's sketch. I had no idea. But anyway, I really like her stuff. I also like YA romance a lot. It's like, I don't know, it's just a nice, fluffy, fun read when I'm in a slump and just want something fun to read. I don't know if I have any favorite authors that I found for YA romance yet, but
You're not into like the Colleen Hoovers and.
I haven't gotten into her. No.
Really?
I haven't read any of her stuff though.
I've never read it either. All I know is that every time I walk into Barnes and Nobles, there's like an entire table devoted to her.
You really strike me as a Colleen Hoover guy, Brandon. Yeah, no, I haven't tried her yet, but my sister loves her, and she's just gotten into reading.
She's got like a cult fan base.
Yeah,
like
she does.
Goodreads is like all about her.
Yeah, and they're making one of her books maybe multiple into a movie. I know of one.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, so I have to give her a shot for sure. But yeah, Rudis Petty's big fan. Jeff Zettner is probably my favorite YA
What
author.
is he written?
I want to say that I think he's from Tennessee, but he writes a lot of like YA contemporary set in the South.
Okay. Which
I really like, having most of my family from Georgia. Like I just get that landscape and it's really fun for me to read. And he kind of wants to make his own like MCU sort of a thing. Like he has his own Jeff Zettner cinematic universe where all of his books will reference people from the other books.
That's cool.
In subtle ways, so you wouldn't pick it up if you hadn't read his other stuff, but then you kind of like get into the fangirl mode when you keep reading his stuff. So he's my other favorite, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you get into like the fantasy and the...
Actually, yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up because I'll just keep adding my other favorites as they come to my brain. But her name is, I'm going to blank it, but my favorite series fantasy is called The Prison Healer. I got Olivia to read it and she really liked it. It's a trilogy, and fantasy has always been like a little bit hit and miss for me. It's not my go-to, but then often when I pick it up, I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. I actually like this. So Prison Healer is my favorite. Lynette Noni is her name. She's from Australia.
Okay.
And that book is like blowing up. She has another series, but it's like 6 books, and I have a really hard time committing to really long series. That's why I don't watch a lot of TV. I just can't focus for that long, apparently. But yeah, that's my other. So yeah, I guess I do like YA fantasy.
Nice.
A little bit of everything.
So as far as writing your own book, how would you even start that process?
Oh, I would love to know. If someone could drop some tips, I would appreciate. I don't know. I think ever since I was a kid, I'll have like random offshoot ideas, and then my notes app is where I go to like write them down. But I haven't ever committed to one long enough to see it through. Adam has his little group of friends from Alaska, and we'll do like a murder mystery every October for the last like 3 years. And for the first couple of years, I would write the whole murder mystery party thing. Very difficult, but super fun. Mm-hmm. So I almost think like that could be my avenue. Just experience wise, having to piece together a whole plot and see it through. Cause it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine the whole start.
Yeah. It's really easy to point out an author's plot holes, but
hard
for an author to fill them, you know. Yeah. I feel for them. So yeah, I don't know what the avenue. I
got to meet with Uncle Robbie.
Yeah, I know I do. I need to pick his brain a little bit. So
nice.
Yeah.
So then, do you read mostly, fiction?
Yeah.
Okay. Not a whole lot of nonfiction.
Not a whole lot of nonfiction. Honestly, the times that I've read nonfiction is when it's been for a book club that was someone else's choosing. Not that I have anything against it. Like, I'm not like, oh my gosh, freaking nonfiction when someone picks a nonfiction book. But it's never like my go-to. I mean, I did choose this book.
I know.
I will say. I did choose this book.
Yeah.
Mostly because I knew it was coming out as a movie. Mm-hmm. And my dad and I are big history buffs. Like, he loves history, and definitely like we clicked over that as I was growing up. So he had mentioned wanting to see this movie when the trailer came out. I was like, oh yeah, this looks really good. He's like, yeah, it's a book. I don't know how I'd never heard about it until I saw the movie trailer, because it's a fairly popular book. But he bought the book, and I was like, I'm going to read this before we go see it. And I'm glad that I did, because I think when I watch the movie, there's just going to be so much that they can't put into those 2 hours, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That I'll have appreciate knowing going into the movie is going to make the experience a lot better, I think.
So this week's book is The Boys in the Boat. And I can't remember. I think, is it George Clooney that's directing the movie? Like, it looks pretty good.
That sounds right.
Like, I'm fairly certain it is.
That sounds right.
I can like double check here. But it's coming out December 25th. So it's coming out Christmas. And so this episode, I think, will come out December 20th. So like right before. I was kind of trying to plan it out like that. But I had actually read this book. This was one of the first books that I read in a really long time. So I had read this book like a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay.
And then I just reread it. But I really, really enjoyed it. What was your like overall?
Overall, I really enjoyed it. By the end, I was definitely feeling like I was a little emotional reading about these guys as they passed away. Adam was like, "This was like 100 years ago." I was like, "Yeah, I know that. Okay, I know that." But now I've connected with them, and I feel sad that they're all gone. But no, I enjoyed it. I think overall, it definitely gave me a lot of. I just thought it was a very inspiring, made me proud to be an American. One of those books that I like, you know, very patriotic and very anti-Nazi, which is good.
Yeah, I mean it's always good to be.
It's always good to be anti-Nazi.
Yeah.
No, I really liked it. I did think it was very. I think sometimes it got in the weeds a little bit with things that didn't warrant as much detail as the author gave it. For example, like I loved when he got super detailed with the really, really high stakes races, because that's obviously where I want the detail. I wanted to know like every moment. But then there was some random stuff. I was like, I don't know why you spent that much time explaining this, because I was just starting to skip through things, and I think it kind of distracted me from the bigger, more important parts. But I will say overall, I liked it. I'd say like 4 out of 5.
Okay. Yeah. The book is pretty polarizing though, as far as reviews go. Really? Yeah. So if you look at reviews on Goodreads or even on like Google or whatever, Audible, basically it's either 5-star or 1-star. Like there's not a whole lot of in between. And it is people are like, I absolutely loved this book. Like it was amazing. Yeah. Like couldn't put it down. And there's a ton of people though that are like, did not finish, could not get into it, so boring, couldn't do it. Yeah. And I was on the 5-star kick of it. Like I thought it was super entertaining the whole time. And then when I finished it and I went back and I read reviews, I was like, what the heck?
What are you saying?
Yeah. What do you mean you couldn't finish this book? Like it was so entertaining. I've read some pretty dull books.
I've read some pretty dry stuff in my time, and that wasn't it. So.
This was not it. But I don't know. Do you think what do you think makes it, I guess, a dull, like what would make it a dull book? You know, what kind of person would you not recommend this book for?
That's a good question. I immediately thought of all 3 of my siblings, but that's going to feel like a burn if they ever listen to this. I think someone who's really interested in history is going to enjoy the book, but I do think like the first half, it takes a little bit of digging your heels into. It did for me, honestly, just because I think it took a minute to warm up to the actual like Olympics part, which is what I was expecting. But there was so much in the first half that irked me in terms of like his life growing up. Like I felt so terrible for him. I kept reading because I was like, there is no way this is a real person's life. So that got me through the hump of the first half. So I don't know. I guess someone who's just not into history or doesn't really care about sport, like, you know, I think it's a good sports story. So people who like a classic sports story are going to enjoy it.
I don't know. I would almost say if you're only into sports, this book is not going to be for you.
That's true. I think it has to be
I think the first half, like you said, the first half is more of a history of the Depression. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it really dives deep into the main character. I don't even know if he's the main character, but he's probably the most talked about boy in the boat, which is Joe Rantz. And it's a lot about his life growing up in the Depression and basically how most of the boys in the boat came from that type of family. Yeah. You know, I mean, they came from people who, you know, didn't have any money, were scraping by, barely paid for anything. They all worked their way through college. They all, you worked summers doing logging, mining, working hard jobs, and that's what kind of made them good rowers. So the entire like first half of the book, I mean, rarely speaks about sports. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I could see somebody going into it thinking like, oh, it's going to be this amazing sports story, and it not getting to that point until about halfway through the book. Yeah. Then it being a little bit dry.
Yeah, I can see that too. I think though, if you have an interest in the like sports history, then it might speak to you a little bit more, because I think the first half they talk a lot about how popular rowing was. Yeah, which blows my mind because it's not really a popular sport now. No, and I thought it was, and this is in this latter half of the book.
Maybe it is, but we're not like
maybe it is. I'm not a rower.
We're not like rich country club kids.
I don't
Ivy
have
League
my
schools.
pinky up while I'm drinking my water. No, I think that was kind of surprising to me to read how popular it was, and then I thought it was funny when they were talking about the Olympics, how it was the first year that basketball was in the Olympics, and obviously, I mean, that's an incredibly popular sport now, and they were saying like track and field and rowing were the top sports then. I think track and field is still probably a more popular sport to watch during the Olympics. Not for me. I don't really care about track and field. No.
Oh, I love track and field.
But rowing. I have to wonder what happened between then and now that it just kind of faded for a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not the most thrilling of sports to watch. And I mean, that's coming from a guy who literally just went in circles on ice for years and years and years and years and years. Yeah. So, I mean, I get it. Yeah. Some of the comments in like Goodreads were like, so boring. I can't believe they would talk about how the paddles would hit the water for 3 pages. And I was like, all right. Let's get some perspective. Like, what do you want them to talk about? It's a boat going in a straight line.
Yeah. What is he going to focus on?
For 4 miles. Like, what do you, there's no like craziness. Like, it's not the most, I don't know. It's not crazy soccer, basketball. There's not a whole lot going on.
There's only so much that can happen in the
they go straight.
Shell of the boat. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So I think expectations probably play into it too. And people are, like you said, back then, I think people kind of had a little bit more of an appreciation for the hard work that goes into a sport like that. Yeah. Whereas now, a lot of sports is flashy. You know what I mean? Like sports are very flashy nowadays.
Very celebrity. That was actually something that stood out to me so much in the book. Was there's this part where they're talking about, he like dives into a lot of the, what does he call them? I can't think of it now, but he has this whole like 4 pages where he talks about all of the requirements for a crew to be really incredible and all this stuff. And it talks about how there are no stars in rowing. Mm-hmm. I have to wonder if that's part of why we don't really care about it as much, because you're right. I think sports are so flashy. We like a celebrity to latch onto, and that's not a thing with rowing, which I think is awesome. I think is so much the point of the book, is that these 9 men had to literally become one system to win and to do well. And that's not the case for a lot of other sports. There are stars, and that's what we I think have started to cling to. So, but yeah, that's something that stood out to me a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as like this Olympics go, so the Boys in the Boat happens. Like the whole story is them prepping to go to the Olympics. I mean, it's they're all a collegiate team, which is also super cool. Yeah. That's one thing that I do appreciate about the Olympics back in the day.
Is that pros couldn't compete. I think that's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with like hockey, and you hear about what the Miracle on Ice, and they were all, none of them were, NHL players. They were all, just out of college or still in college playing, and they were all amateurs. Yeah. And I almost think that that's more fun. You know what I mean? Like it's not the best of the best, but I think it is more fun for, one, the athletes, and, 2, for just, I don't know, people in general, to see somebody who's not making, $30 million a year still being able to compete at the highest level and have that opportunity. I think that is really neat. Yeah. And you definitely lose something from that. But like the Olympics that they were training for was the Berlin Olympics, which there was a ton of controversy around that. Yeah. Obviously, it was like the rise of the Nazi Party and everything like that. But I mean, I feel like there's a lot of famous people that came out of that Olympics, but the rowing team was definitely not one of them.
No.
But
I'm like, they're saying Jesse Owens. I'm like, oh yeah, Jesse Owens. I don't know anything about Joe Rantz. I've never heard that name before.
I mean, and there was definitely a lot of other famous athletes that came out of there. But I like you said, there's just not like one star. And because of that, it kind of gets lost by the wayside. But like it was so popular that Hitler was at that race.
Yeah.
Like there are tons of sports going around all over the Olympic Park, and Hitler's at the rowing race.
That was the priority. Yeah.
You know, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, that would have been a crazy Olympics.
Oh my gosh.
At one point in the book, they talk about boycotting the Olympics, because I know that was a big topic of concern for the team. Do you think that it ever like would warrant boycotting the Olympics? I mean, if there was ever a time to boycott the Olympics, it was, you know, it was Nazi Germany.
Probably then.
But I mean, they talked about boycotting the Olympics with China. I mean, there was a ton of concern about the U.S. boycotting Olympics in China and you know, everything like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's kind of a place for a stand like that, like a social stand?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think I would have been bummed had we not gone to the Olympics and competed, maybe for the wrong reasons. I don't know, like not because I would have been, oh, I don't have any entertainment this summer, but more because I think it's an opportunity to show how awesome America is. I don't know. Like I was like, oh no, let them go and whip all these Germans' butts. But also it's like great for the German economy, so I can see why boycotting would be a thing for sure. But I don't know. I was never on team. Yeah, they should dip out and not compete. But I don't know. I don't know about us boycotting China. I mean, obviously we ended up going, but I don't think I've ever been on team boycott.
Team boycott.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have never been. As somebody who like has seen people get ready to go to the Olympics and everything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of time and effort and years. Gosh. I mean, like since you're a kid planning on doing that, and it only comes around once every 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can be like, we'll boycott this one.
Next time.
Get them next time. 4 years is huge in sports. I mean, there's injuries, there's just age in general. Like you hit your peak at a specific time.
Yeah.
And so like to boycott the Olympics, I mean, you're taking away a lot from athletes. And I know that's kind of selfish, because then on the flip side of that, people are like, well, I mean, the Germans are killing people. So it's like, how do you support killing people over like athletic dreams? But I don't know, like that to me, I don't know. Sports almost seems bigger to me. Does that make sense?
I will say, like,
I'm not bigger than like killing people. Again, that sounds terrible.
Like, maybe some clarification.
But bigger than conflict. You know what I mean? Like it's the opportunity for people to come together in a moment and compete on, you know, non-life and death terms.
Yeah.
And then you can go about your life doing the same thing. And I think that the Berlin Olympics were a really good example of that. Like, yes, there was propaganda everywhere, and they go to it pretty in depth in the book of, you know, cleaning up the streets, the Jews getting out, you know what I mean? Like all of the signs that said that Jews aren't welcome were all taken down so that they could appear like they weren't doing what they were doing. So yes, like there's definitely some negatives to it. However, it was a time when, you know, the whole world came together. People, I mean, from all over got to meet each other and see each other. And even weirdly enough in the book, he talks about how the crew team especially looked at Germans and even Hitler and like shook hands with him and said like everybody was super cordial just for that time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think considering the fact that we hadn't really entered the Holocaust at that point, they didn't know what was going on, the full extent of what was going on, or the full extent of what would happen. There's no way that Germany would have been able to host the Olympics in the few years after they did host the Olympics. So I think, that should be said as far as like murdering millions of people goes. That was where am I trying to go with this? Like that I think is more important than obviously like an athlete.
Yeah.
But where they were right then, like they didn't know all of that stuff. I think it's crazy how effective the propaganda was. Lenny, I can't remember her last name.
Riefenstahl?
Yeah. Her story was really fascinating to me. That she was a woman during this period and doing what she was, but also how good she was at it, which is probably the only reason that she was able to do what she did as a woman in that time period. But yeah, they were able to manipulate so countries, just all the press. It was shocking to me when it quoted some, I can't remember, some publication that said, "Oh, everyone, like this Hitler guy is not, he's pretty good. Like we should all have this guy on our team," which is just like so disturbing, knowing what we know, but they didn't know. They had no idea.
Yeah.
So it's nuts.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting the way that the author kind of wrote the book, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't all like the way that the story's outlined or the way that their story is written is it's not just, all about the boys. And then at the very end, it's like, okay, we're going to the Olympics and then here's everything you need to know about Germany.
Right.
But the story's written back and forth essentially. So it's as the crew team is preparing for Olympic trials and for, ultimately the Olympics, it bounces back and forth in, similar timeline of Germany preparing for the Olympic Games and everything that they're trying to basically hide and everything that they're trying to portray to the world. And it talks about, again, the propaganda, getting rid of hiding all of the negative things.
Homeless and gypsies and all. Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of like the pro sports videos that they're just pumping out and like athletic dreams and, basically Nazis are the superior race and we're going to win at everything. Right. And, they're just pumping all of this stuff out at the same time. So it was interesting to see how, both sides prepared for that moment.
Yeah, I know. I liked that they did that bouncing back and forth because I think it built the stakes up so much more for that moment when they're racing. Because had the author just kind of ignored Nazi Germany up until the point that they were in Berlin, it wouldn't have had the impact that it did. Yeah, and I think I have like a love-hate relationship with how many people were scattered throughout the book. Because on the one hand, like I just said, I think it did build the stakes a lot. And I learned about figures in the Nazi Party I'd never heard of before that were really influential into what happened. Can you hear her?
You can't on here. We can hear it
okay,
but you can't hear
my
her.
baby's crying in the background.
But if you need to pause it, we can pause it.
I'll let Adam suffer. If it gets really bad, he'll text you or something. But anyway, there were so many names dropped that I often found myself struggling to remember because they would bring a person up later on, kind of assuming that I remember them from the past. And I was like, I don't know. There's so many German names in this book. I can't remember who this is. But yeah, so I think there are pros and cons to having written it. But ultimately, I think I am in favor for what the author chose to do there.
Yeah, it was really, I liked the German part added to it. I felt like you said, it built it up for that final moment to mean so much more.
Yeah, totally.
Especially that Germany was like in the race, and again, it was high stakes. Rowing was like legit back then.
Yeah, rowing was a thing. Yeah,
I know. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
The first half of the book, though, I think, like we said earlier, is mostly about the Great Depression. Do you think that Joe Rantz's story is kind of unique to him, or how prevalent do you think that was?
I think there is probably quite a bit of overlap in terms of his economic and social status, obviously. It did mention quite a few times like, oh, XYZ person in the boat was about as poor as Joe was. It seemed like they were never poorer than Joe. They were almost like just barely. So I think he kind of, as far as the other guys on his boat, definitely was in the worst case scenario for money. But so I think they were similar in that regard, but all the stuff that happened with his dad and his stepmom, I don't think that's normal. Like Joyce, it talks a lot about how angry she was and how shocked she was that Joe's stepmom, Thula, what a name, could do the things that she did to Joe. I think that, I don't think I have to hope a lot of people weren't going through that. I think that was an exception to the rule for sure. I think that was really terrible circumstances and very unique to him.
Is that why you think he became kind of the main protagonist of the boat?
That and because he ate so much, apparently. He focuses on that so much. This guy ate everything and everyone's crap on the plates around him. So I do think that that's probably a big reason why he became sort of the protagonist of the story, was that situation with his family was so... I just can't even imagine going through what he did. First, his mom dying, and then his dad running off to Canada, right?
Yeah, so his mom died. He has one older brother.
Yeah, who's much older than him.
Much older than him. His dad, or his mom dies.
Yeah.
When he's... How old was he?
Like 2 or 3,
yeah.
I think.
And then his dad just is like, I mentally can't handle this. He runs off to live in a log cabin in Canada and just leaves his kids.
Yeah.
To there. But his older brother's like in his teens.
He's like, almost an adult at this point.
And he like takes care of him for a little bit. And then his dad comes back. Or no, his brother gets married.
Yes.
Right? His brother gets married to this nice lady. And his dad comes back in town and marries his brother's...
The nice lady's twin.
Yeah, the nice lady's twin.
So his daughter-in-law's twin sister.
Which is so messed up.
I was like... I had to reread that like 4 times. Like, no. Yeah.
And the author clarifies. He's like, no, in case you didn't hear that, she just became the mother-in-law of her twin.
Yep.
Like, that's the relation. That's the relationship right there.
Yeah.
But then that lady ends up being, so then his older brother and his wife move to Seattle. Mm-hmm. And his dad and his new stepmom have 2 more new kids. And his stepmom is just crazy.
Yeah.
And hates him because it reminds the dad of, his wife who he didn't leave because she was a terrible person. She died.
Yeah. He was distraught over it. Yeah, like mentally unstable.
Yeah. So that's really sad. Mm-hmm. And then they just are like, you know what, kid? We're leaving. Yeah.
She just like lets him exist as this young kid living in already some of the worst situation that the country has been in. And I think they went on to have like 4 of their own kids or something. And Joe was never allowed to see them when Thula was around. I mean, she's point blank told him like, do not come back here.
Yeah, they leave. They move to Seattle and they leave this kid who's not even in high school yet.
No.
I think he said he was 12 when they left, or 11.
That sounds right. Yeah, 12 or something.
Yeah, 11 or 12 when they leave, and they just say like, all right.
In their unfinished house.
Yeah, it was an unfinished house. And so he ends up like working for food.
Poaching salmon with his buddy and...
Yeah, collecting mushrooms and just kind of living by himself as a 12-year-old.
Yep.
Until he gets to high school, and then he goes and lives with his brother to have like a better education, then gets into University of Washington and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm always interested in what makes exceptional people exceptional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I feel like there are a lot of unexceptional people in this world who have been given so much. You know what I mean?
Potential.
And really have nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
Like they've got food, they've got housing, they've got way too many video games. You know what I mean?
There we go. That's the thing. Yeah.
And they choose to do absolutely nothing with it and then complain about their life. You know what I mean? Like there's a ton of people, whether you're online or whether you meet them honestly, even in person, who do nothing but complain about everything that they don't have.
Yeah.
And then you have a kid like Joe who literally has nothing, is 12 years old, and his dad just says, hey, I'm choosing my new wife over you. Have fun living alone.
Yeah. Stuff that parents would go to prison over, like to jail over, like neglect in the purest form. So
yeah, and then the whole city's like, all right, there's just this homeless kid, but I mean, we're not going to help him. He needs to work still to eat. Like, we're not giving him free food.
They had dire circumstances too.
It's the middle of the Depression. Like, cards are stacked against this kid a million times. And he grows up to, 1, get into college, 2, get put on a rowing team, make the Olympics, get a gold medal in the Olympics, graduate with an engineering degree, work for Boeing, have a family, marry his high school sweetheart. They live together throughout their whole, like, happy marriage throughout his whole life, grandkids, the whole shebang, like, lives the American dream, but starts from absolutely nothing. What is it that you think kind of takes somebody in that circumstance where the cards are all stacked against him and changes and, like, allows him to kind of rise to the occasion? Because in all circumstances, he should be just counted out and done. He'll be an alcoholic
for sure.
On a porch in his hometown city, never going anywhere in life.
I think, for starters, the thing that stands out to me when you ask that is when it talks about how he realized that he could forage mushrooms in the forest, and he got, like, super pumped about that. He, like, had this moment where he realized that he was surrounded by opportunity. He just had to figure out how to be creative enough to find it. And I think he had the right mix of, creativity and ambition and grit to do what a lot of other people couldn't do. I think it was a mixture of those things, and I don't know.
Do you think that's taught, or do you think that's inherent? Because he wasn't obviously taught anything, right. But, like, do you think that's something that people just inherently have?
I think each of us have an opportunity to choose. I don't know. Maybe I would say, I guess, like, being a religious person, like, I think that we all have a spark of divinity or whatever inside of us. And so I think it's all up to us to choose whether to do something with it. So I think for him, I definitely don't think it's taught. I think it's sort of inherent in everyone, but you get the opportunity to choose is what I would say.
It's interesting reading books so close together, like with Bookly podcast. I've just been, like, reading
slammed
basically nonstop for, like, the last couple months. And I just got done reading Outliers. Okay, and so like taking the ideas from Outliers and how basically Malcolm Gladwell says that everything that any successful person has is a result of their environment 100%. And if you don't have people behind you setting you up for success, it's almost impossible to be successful. And then, like, literally 2 weeks after reading that book, I read this book. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I just feel like, I don't know that that's necessarily true. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, the idea from Outliers, again, is that, like, people are given those opportunities constantly from a young age, and that's why they are successful. And that's what separates the successful people from the unsuccessful people. Yeah. But I would definitely not put Joe Rantz in the cards stacked in his favor from a young age perspective.
No, I wouldn't either, definitely. However, I think he found people to put in his corner. He wasn't born into a situation where he had people in his corner. His brother a little bit, but they really don't talk about his brother that much. His brother definitely helped him education-wise when he was trying to get into University of Washington. So I think that was really an essential part of the story. But also you have people like Joyce, who he met as a kid and then, like, the back of the school bus and became a very important figure, a very stable person in his life, moving on from that point. And then you have, I think of the person, I can't remember what his name was, George or something, but not George.
Not Pocock?
No, not Pocock, but in his hometown.
The guy that he cuts trees with.
Yes. I feel like that was also sort of a pivotal person for him. Not that he was there always, but that I think Joe did find a couple of people that he could rely on. Because if he had no one, I don't know. Yeah, I think we do need other people to function, definitely, and to thrive. So I think he did find some people to put in his corner. But would I say that the odds were in his favor? Absolutely not. Yeah. I think even that took work for him to find people to support him.
Yeah. And it's not like he had people looking out for him either. Like, I know that you kind of say like the guy that he cuts trees with was, you know, kind of in his corner. But I mean,
he was still working for that guy.
I was about to say.
He still had to do labor to get fed.
It wasn't like that guy was like, oh man, poor Joe Rantz. We should invite him over for dinner. And, you know, I should take him out. We should go look at trees and stuff like that. Like,
look at trees. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it was like, it was a working relationship that Joe had to build from nothing.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't somebody reaching out to Joe and saying, hey, how can I help you? It was Joe saying like, okay, I'm going to work and help you cut down trees.
Yeah.
And, you know, basically be labor for you so that I can eat. And that blossomed into a relationship. So again, I just don't think.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for him, it was something inherent. You know what I mean? And I don't know that I see that all too often.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think he is a spectacular person and definitely unique for the things that he did and the drive that he had.
Yeah. So outside of Joe, or was Joe your favorite character in the book?
I think Thula was my... Just kidding. Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. I think you definitely learn the most about Joe. Mm-hmm. I had to love Joyce too. Just kind of getting to see into her mind a little bit and her determination to be a mother figure to his younger siblings. She went out of her way to do a lot of things that weren't necessary for her to do. Mm-hmm. And it talked about how when they were getting married, like she was very determined that Joe would never again be in a situation where he had a loveless home or somewhere that wasn't safe for him to come home to at the end of the day. So I had to love Joyce for that. I really like her character. I also think I loved George Pocock. I think he was one of my favorite characters. He's just this unassuming guy. I don't know why he wasn't the head coach. Sorry, Al. But he is so, I mean, he is the best of the best pretty much, but he's just this quiet guy who kind of only like offers his 2 cents when he's asked, if that, you know, very humble, obviously had an influence in each chapter because the author chose to open at every chapter with a quote from George. I would say he was probably my other favorite character.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked George Pocock too. Mm-hmm. I felt like I almost wanted more of him.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, I think you kind of get a little bit of his backstory in the book, kind of where he's from, how he made it to Washington, and kind of what he's been up to since then. Yeah. But ultimately, I felt like there was like a lot missing from that. Like, I had no idea from his personal life. Like, was he married? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, did he have a family?
Right. I think it mentions his wife like 2 times when they would go to eat with Al and his wife. But that was it. You don't know anything else.
No. And, you know, does he have kids? What is he like? I mean, does he literally just live in the shell house and make boats all day, every day? You know what I mean?
Boat hermit, yeah.
So, like, because I did like him as a character. He was one of the ones, probably one of the only characters that I felt like was like really underdeveloped for how important he was to the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was one of my pet peeves of the book. I wanted to know more about him. And really, honestly, I wanted to know more about every boy too.
I mean, yeah. I think the author doesn't spend a lot of time talking about those 9. Those other 8 guys. Like, he'll throw in some stuff, and depending on how often Joe interacted with them, they'll get a little bit more stage time, I guess. But you really don't know a lot for a book that's like pretty decent in length. It's like 400 pages. You don't know a ton about a lot of the big players.
Yeah, I feel like it goes more into rowing.
Yeah.
Than it does to the actual rowers, and maybe that is because that's kind of the point of rowing. You know, like he talks about it multiple times throughout the book, that rowing is more about like forgetting yourself and becoming part of the team. So maybe that's
a reflection of that.
A reflection. Yeah. Maybe that was like a purposeful.
I could see that. I never thought of that, but
way of doing that. But yeah, I mean, you really don't like. from an individual standpoint, there's not a whole lot about the athletes other than Joe, except for what they go on to do after. And there's like little bits from every athlete. Like you learn little quirks and stuff like that, but not a whole lot of backstory.
Yeah, you don't. I know, which I would have been curious to learn. I think, yeah, as people, we cling on to other people's stories and histories. I think, do we just take interest in them? So I would have loved to know more about Don Hume. And I mean, you get to know a little bit about like Bobby Mock. I don't know if that's how you say his last name.
The coxswain.
Yeah. Like how he was a valedictorian in his school and how a botched surgery on his appendix or something like left him asthmatic and
short. It stunted his growth.
Yeah, it stunted his growth, but he was very determined to go out for every single sport. And I was like, that's awesome. I think that's another great example of someone who, like you said, is exceptional. Like you get to see these little glimpses into what made them that way. It's like moments like that where they decide to do the harder thing.
Yeah.
The significantly harder thing. I have a lot of respect for that. So yeah, it was fun to get glimpses into other people's stories. I would have maybe liked a little bit more, but Joe is awesome. So I'm glad they spent a lot of time on it.
Yeah. And crazy.
Wild story.
Wild story.
Yeah.
So as a new parent, I always like to ask these questions, but how do you set your kid up to be kind of exceptional like that? Have you put any thought into that and kind of the way that you parent? Because I usually, do you even think about that when you read stories like this?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what I envision. Every time I read a story like this and it's like pumps me up, I'm always like, well, my time's passed, but how do I make my kids freaking dope? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I always think. I was like, I just want my kids to be that exceptional. You know what I mean? Like, I'm definitely, this sounds bad, but I'm definitely not like a loser. You know what I mean? Like I like work hard and I try different things.
Yeah.
But I didn't get an Olympic gold medal for rowing and all those kinds of things. But like, I don't know. I want that for my kids. You know what I mean? If they want it, I don't want to force it. But like, I want them to have that opportunity to be exceptional, like characters in books and like the people that inspire us, whether it's in sports books or, just any historical book where there's exceptional people.
Yeah.
And was there anything from this book that you felt like you could pull into your parenting?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely crosses my mind when I'm reading books. I was like, at least I'm going to be a better mom than Thula, if anything else. Sorry. But
bare minimum.
Bare minimum, I'm upset, better than that.
Don't abandon your children at 12.
But apparently that could make them exceptional. So maybe I could take a couple notes from Thula's book. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to opportunity and giving your kid, like, having them do hard things from the time that they're little. That's not to say I'm gonna, make my kid make their own money from the time that they're 4 and that they're gonna have to figure out how to feed themselves, because I don't believe that that's their job as a child. Like, as a parent, I think I'm responsible for that. But I do think giving them lots and lots of opportunities to do hard things and also doing hard things myself. I honestly think that's a big factor. Like, I don't think anyone could say that Harry Rantz wasn't a hard worker. Mm-hmm. Joe, as unstable as a father he was, I do think Joe had examples of hard work in his life, which you weren't going to make it in America not being a hard worker in the Great Depression, so it wasn't really his choice. But I think as a parent, I have to constantly be trying to do hard things and pushing myself and being willing to fail and showing my kid how to respond to failure in a productive way. I think those are all things that will help them. And then, just giving them lots and lots of opportunities to do those things that scare them. Because he was constantly doing things that put him outside of his comfort zone, to the point that his comfort zone just kept growing and growing and growing. And he was able to do really, really hard things throughout his whole life. I mean, it talked about how he was still like out in the woods cutting down trees in it says his 9th decade. I mean, at that point he had family members out there with him, making sure he didn't keel over, but he was still doing really hard things. So I think that's a huge element that I take away from reading this book is, you and your kids go do hard things and fail and figure out how to stand back up, you know?
Yeah. And that was true for all of them. Like, I don't remember which boy it was in the boat, but it talks about one of them living on an island or on a peninsula or something like that. He had to row to school, to and from school every single day. And it was like miles to and from school. Like he would wake up at the crack of dawn and row to school, go to school all day, do his homework, and then row home. And it was like he would get home at 10 or 11 every single night because his parents couldn't afford to live closer to any other school. And they were basically stuck in this house that they'd inherited. And so they just had this boat to get everywhere. And that's how he lived his life. Yeah. And then like you were saying, Bobby Mock, I mean, he tried everything and failed at lots of different things, but was, a super hard worker.
Right.
And I know that there were a couple of them that worked in the mines. Like I think it was Don Hume may have been the one that worked in was a miner from like high school.
Such a scary job.
You know what I mean? Like just again, don't have to do like mining, but like hard things.
Give my kid a freaking hard hat and send her into the wild. Yeah. No, but I think trusting that your kids are can be tough.
Yeah.
And not coddling them to the point that they never have to do anything hard.
Yeah. And doing hard things early in life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're not paving the way for your kids through, graduating from college. And then you're like, all right, now's the time for you to start doing hard things after college. Like all of these boys had been doing hard things from a very young age. So then when it came to rowing, that was another thing that they talked about in the book quite a bit. Was at tryouts for rowing, how many, pristine looking, athletic men show up to rowing. And then after the first day, there's a lot less. Yep. And then the second day, there's a lot less. And the coaches and Pocock always said, like, we never have to cut anybody. He's like, people just don't hack it. You know what I mean? And so
they
like
just
learning
sort themselves out.
Yeah. Learning to do hard things from a very early age, I think was important for every single person in that boat.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, I would agree. Awesome. So ranking this book from 0 to 5 for fun and for importance, what would you rank this book?
I would definitely say it was more important than it was fun. I don't know if I would call this a fun book.
Okay.
Were there moments that were fun? Yes. I think if I had to rank it on the fun scale, a 2 or a 3. Maybe a 3. I'll be generous because there are definitely moments that are fun. Okay. There are definitely moments that are fun and exciting to read. But a lot of it's like pretty heavy and very like history dense. I guess I have fun reading. But yeah, and the way I would define fun, maybe like a 3, and then importance, probably a 5. I mean, I think in terms of teaching someone how to live a great life, this is what this book's about. I think that's probably the most important lesson you can learn. So, I would give it a 5.
Yeah, I think I'd go 4 in fun and 5, honestly, because I really did like this book. There was no point in this book where I was ever bored, to be honest. Okay. I actually really enjoyed like even all the technical stuff from rowing and everything, and maybe that comes from.
I was gonna say, do you feel like that's part of because you trained to be in the Olympics and like like you said, you're going in circles?
Yes. So I was about to say, I think it comes from doing a very technical sport, whether that was skating or whether that was like cross country skiing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like with skating, you're balancing on, this blade that's, millimeters thick, and you're leaning over and going around a corner going, 20 miles, 25 miles an hour or whatever. Right. So like the amount of technique involved in that and like precision involved in that is like very, it's a ton. So one little tiny mistake, like he talks about how, what do you call it? Catching a crab.
Yeah.
Like if the oar doesn't turn over at the exact amount of time, they call it catching a crab, and then all of a sudden
like the right depth and the right speed as
smacks them in the chest or launches them out of the boat. And I felt like I could relate to that really well, playing a very technical sport. Now there are tons of other technical sports out there, and so if that's you, then I would say you're probably going to have a lot of fun reading this because you understand kind of the importance of those minute details. And so I felt like I really did.
Yeah.
But
that makes sense.
But I do understand that it's also not for everybody because it is so granular. You know what I mean? Like it's very, very, very detailed. Mm-hmm. And so if that's not you and you want more of a fast-paced sports book, then this is probably not going to end up being a 4 for fun for you. Yeah. It's probably going to be more like a 2.
Apparently there's like a YA version of this book, so maybe pick that one up. If you want.
Is there really?
Yeah. I had to make sure I didn't accidentally buy it, actually. There's like 2 versions.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. So that might be more up their alley if they're wanting something a little shorter, fast-paced.
Or just watch the movie, I guess.
Or just watch a movie. Yeah, probably the right
I'm hoping that the movie is going to be good. Because, again, I really liked this book.
Me too.
And I don't want them to ruin this movie. Mm-hmm. But from the commercials, it looks pretty good.
It does. And I'm very curious as to what details they'll choose to include.
Yeah.
How much of his backstory are they going to go into? And is Al and George, are you going to know more about them? Like, are there going to be characters that they give more time to that we thought, I would have liked to know more about them? Are they going to give them more time in the movie? I don't know. I'm excited to see.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited. So, anything else that you'd like to add about the book here before we wrap up?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would recommend it. Definitely. My dad's about to read it and I'm really excited to pick his brain and see what he thinks about it. He's a big sports guy. But I think rowing is probably one of the few sports he doesn't really know anything about. Mm-hmm. I mean, he knows absurd things about. I'm like, bro, you watch hockey? I didn't know he watched hockey. Which I mean is a popular sport, but maybe I wouldn't say as popular as some others. But
not popular for a kid from Georgia.
No. Yeah, I'm like, what the freak? You just have more time on your hands than you know what to do with. Apparently, you need another hobby. But I'm excited for him to read this and to talk to him about it.
If he's a history nut, I feel like this is going to be a good overlap of history and sports. Yeah. And that's what I felt like it was. I love World War II history. And so the overlap between World War II history, sports history, also, I'm obviously a very big fan of the Olympics in general. Right. So just Olympic sports, it was really cool.
Rah, rah, go America.
Yeah.
You like that kind of stuff. This is your book.
For sure. And this was great. This is great for it.
I enjoyed it. So definitely recommend.
Awesome. Well, for those of you still listening on the podcast, next week's book is going to be 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And then sometime this month, if it hasn't already come out, I'm doing... I always forget them.
All the Lonely People?
Yes, All the Lonely People. So that'll be dropping sometime. And then hopefully by this time, I'll also have all of the books picked out for February. Or not February. Man, my brain is just scattered. January. All the books picked out for January. So either look on our Instagram account or I'm going to try to find a way to post them on YouTube as well so that you can see what books we're going to be reading so you can read along. And if you are watching on YouTube, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever podcasts are listened to, please leave us a 5-star review. And if you would,
so much to remember.
I know. It's like the spiel at the end of this.
I probably just messed up your flow too. So.
No, you're good. You're good. I mean, no, you did. I'm just kidding. No, and if you want to be a guest on the podcast, it's fun and you can read a book with me. Please reach out either on Instagram or leave us a comment on YouTube. And if there's anybody that you'd like to see as a guest on the podcast or you would recommend that we try to reach out to, please, again, just reach out and let us know who you'd like. Leave us comments. We're going to be trying to update the Instagram to make it a little bit more fun and engaging. So just keep an eye out for the Instagram as well.
Go Reels.
That's the idea. I've never made a reel in my life.
I haven't either.
Olivia hates them to the bottom of her core.
To make them or to watch them?
To make them. Oh. I mean, everybody loves watching reels.
Yeah. I was like, what, Olivia? Yeah.
No, hates them. So we'll see. I'm definitely going to need her help to help make
I have a success story. if it will inspire you.
Yeah, let's hear it.
There's a girl in my ward. She lives right behind us. She started
in like your parents'
no, in my home, like in our
in
ward
Provo.
Ward. Yeah, in Provo. So she's our age. She started a like a book recommendation Instagram. Mm-hmm. It's great. It's nothing exceptional. Like she's not doing anything different than other people necessarily, but she was able to grow her Instagram account. She has almost 15,000 followers in like 2 months.
Really?
She's not doing anything like crazy. I think it comes down to the reels. And she like had one post where she was like, she was floored that it was able to pick up traction like that. But she talks about why she thinks she had some success there. But dude, I think that was it. I think so many people are able to find her on Discover and stuff because of that. I was amazed. I was like, what the? Because I was watching it grow. I mean, I was like one of her first like 5 followers. Yeah. And like the only person like leaving comments in the first few days. So I was like, she's like my ministering sister or whatever. So it was fun to talk to her. But yeah, so it popped off.
Maybe we'll have to have her on the podcast.
You should. She's really nice. She's awesome.
And she obviously reads.
Yeah, she obviously reads. She goes through a lot. I'd be curious to see what you'd have to read.
I mean, I'd let her pick.
Yeah.
So maybe maybe ask her for me. Okay. Or like put like.
She follows you guys.
Oh, does she?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll have to look.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for asking me. It was super fun.
Thanks.